Welcome to this next episode in our Emmes at Home series, a program developed by Emmes to share thought leadership safely and securely from their homes during a pandemic. We are pleased to welcome our moderator, Jill Barrett, and her colleagues in the Vaccines and Infectious Disease Therapeutic Research Unit at Emmes.
When the site staff themselves are seeing a lot of patients every day, and a lot of sick patients. So how do we deal with those interactions? And what is it about a pandemic that might be a little bit different than other studies?
So I think in the STRIVE trial, the subjects getting the vaccine reactogenicity symptoms were potentially overlapping with signs and symptoms of Ebola. And it was really important in that trial to carefully understand when subjects presented as being ill, whether they might have suspected Ebola, which was the efficacy outcome of the study, or if they were having a reaction to the vaccine, because if they were only having a reaction to the vaccine, no one wanted to send them to an Ebola evaluation center where they might actually get exposed. So part of that response was being very careful about the training. And again, our medical and safety staff did a large amount of training with the clinicians who were not necessarily in the mindset to think of vaccine reactogenicity versus Ebola. They had been working in Ebola. So part of it was providing that training and the materials and the references and the guidelines so that they can make that decision. And then also, again, just having more of that open mind of what the site staff were going through on a day-to-day basis. For the STRIVE trial, I remember there was a devastating flood in Freetown during the trial. Several of the subjects enrolled in the trial died during that flood. It was really tragic, but also the coordinating center, the data entry center, was damaged in that flood. And so, that's not a situation we necessarily have to deal with frequently for domestic studies or non-pandemic studies. So just keeping that in mind, the challenges that are being faced on the ground, I think, are in the hospitals or in the clinic sites is important.
It is a challenge to weigh the rigorous standards that we are held to in studies, especially in the US, best clinical practices, FDA standards for data and whatnot, against the more human element and aspect. And I think, Jill, you hit the nail on the head. It's very hard to ask a coordinator to go complete a form when they're seeing patients, in acute situations. They're dying, they're dealing with a lot, and it's even more enhanced in a pandemic.
I think that's the balance is what is key there, because for COVID, obviously for these treatment trials, we have to enroll them as quickly as possible, get the subjects, treatment if they need it, if this treatment works. But we need the data too, because we can't evaluate if it's working. We can't share the knowledge with others until we have the data and the data are clean and we can perform the analyses. And that's our job as the data statistical coordinating center, to care about those things. But for the research nurses, it's their job to enter the data, but it's also their job to care for the subjects. It's very hard.
More positive note, just one thing, not just from the STRIVE trial, but almost every trial we do is really brings a sense of gratitude for the staff at the clinics, at the laboratories working on these trials, and the additional activities they do for research beyond their standard of care, but also for the participants. I mean, a pandemic's always a little different, but for any less than healthy patient population that is willing to engage in a clinical trial, it's kind of an amazing extra sacrifice that's really important.
Going back to kind of collecting the data and balancing kind of showing empathy for the family, especially if subjects are transitioning to comfort care or hospice. They may want to just be done with everything, the trial completely, but it's still important for us as the data coordinating center. We still want the data all the way through death rather than having them withdraw from the trial, just to be able to analyze everything. So just striking that balance again with empathy towards the family, but also trying to get as much data as possible.
Yeah, I think we've took the same approach for the ACT study. Not just international sites, domestic sites as well, because they super busy sites in New York City, and when New York City was a hot spot and 90 subjects enrolled and they needed, help cleaning their data, get on the phone, the data manager would get on the phone with them, just walk them through the queries, walk them through how to resolve it in the data system. It cuts out that back and forth. It gets it clean, quick. And and it builds that relationship, which is going back to our relationship building question. It's really key for the success of the trial. Great. That's a great conversation. Anything to add?
So I'm not sure how relevant it is, but I found it interesting, the issue we kind of ran into at the beginning in response to just an infectious, this infectious disease where these patients were in isolation rooms. And a lot of times we ask sites to take a paper form and then enter the data later, but if they're taking a paper form into the room, it's not coming out of there. So it's kind of, how do you get it into an electronic system without being able Yeah, exactly. So that was just something I thought was interesting in the kind of infectious isolation room setting.
Thank you again for attending, and have a great day.